Hey, what's up, card fighters? So I wanted to go over my Minerva deck that I used to get second place at Oviedo Locals, versus Games Locals, that is, and used to get 18th place. We did bubble out from top 16 with an X2 record after 6 rounds, I believe, but we got 18th place from Minerva, so I did just want to go over our Minerva list since we do have the match videos already up on the channel. So we're going to go over the Genesis engine, and then we're going to go over the generic support that just works really well with this deck, and then I'll talk about what I've changed, what I maybe would change in the possible future that I thought about testing this out, but I probably won't play this deck for a while, just moving on to new projects. You know how we do on this channel. So let's get on with the Genesis engine. You're maxing out on Persona Ride, just because it's a Genesis card, and you do have to max out on your Genesis cards for Minerva's restand ability, because she does require you to discard a Genesis. Maxing out on Cauliflower, and you're maxing out on Froggy. Now, the reason that you are maxing out on these two is because these are your multi-attack extenders, at least Cauliflower is, because besides your Vanguard restanding, which does require your opponent to be on grade 3, which you would think you would have like a really bad Jet matchup, but your matchup against Chrono Jet's actually like very, not, I wouldn't say it's like the best, but I would say like you do have the upper hand whether you go first or second more often than not, because all you have to do is like sculpt your hand defensively, and you're just like naturally an aggro deck, to whereas it's more often than not too hard for you to close the game out by turn 4 or by turn 5, the latest. But yeah, we are maxing out on Cauliflower and Frog because they are your multi-attack extenders. Not really much to talk about there. 4 copies of Angelica. Angelica is really crucial to this deck, especially if you are going first, because she is your counter charger, and she is, again, because Minerva needs your opponent to be at grade 3 or greater for her restand effect, she does become a multi-attack extender if you're going first to get the Cauliflower out, to be able to just, hit your opponent for a minimum of 4 times. If you have 2 Angelicas, then you can hit your opponent 5 times, I believe. But you are maxing out on her again because it's a Genesis name. Really not much to talk about here. 4 copies of Cider. Cider's really good in this deck because she does bounce back to your hand after she boosts. And she's a Genesis. And she gets shield value. So she's just like a very valuable card in this deck that, she either becomes shield, she becomes discard fodder, and she's a booster like all at the same time. So not really much to talk about here. Like I said, these are your Genesis cards, which are damn near mandatory. You're playing one of the Chalice here. Now the reason I'm playing Chalice is just because this deck is actually, it does have the space and it does benefit from Persona Ride. Just because, like I said, this is a very aggressive deck. Just having the 15 to the front row versus the 5K is very crucial. I know there was some games where I was versing against Jet that just because I wasn't able to Persona Ride, I wasn't able to close out the game on that turn. And, just them checking a defensive also just hurts very badly. But, moving on to your other non-engine cards, we are playing 4 copies of Drilling Angel. The reason that we're playing Drilling Angel is just because more often than not, my discard targets are either the Frog Witch or the Cauliflower Witch, because you could use Drilling Angel to shove them into Soul. More often than not, you will whiff. There were times that I was able to just get the Superior Call off for free. That's really an added bonus. You're using Drilling Angel more often than not to just set up your Soul. And it can also set up a Regalia grade 3 if you didn't already have one. So that's why we are maxing out Drilling Angel at 4 copies. Then we're running 4 copies of Desolation Knight, I believe her name is. Now, I did see another Minerva player in the tournament that he was running the grade 2, that if you have a grade 3 card in Soul, she gets 5k and she gets boost, and that's active on both players' turns. You could play that over this. That actually might be better than this, but you wouldn't have access to your really good turn 1 rush plays if you're going second, or just like really, even if you're going first, really good turn 2 rush plays. So that's the basic idea I was with Desolation Knight. It did come in clutch really well, but it was essentially just a dead card, outside of outside of turn 3 the latest. But yeah, we were at 4 copies maximum because we were running this deck as a very aggressive deck. I felt very confident playing the deck during the Kingslayer event. I felt like, you know, this is a deck that could take me to top, even though unfortunately we did bubble out. Going on to the rest of the deck, 3 DPGs, nothing much to talk about here. One of the Blitz Order PG, this is very crucial in the Jet matchup. Like, if you don't, you're able to naturally just cycle through your deck very fast, but if you don't see this in the Jet matchup, it is just, it feels really bad, to be honest. I'm not going to lie to you, and you do have to, like, change your guarding accordingly because of the guard restrict and because they just get that free power off the crest from their G units. Next, going on to the triggers, one of the Keter Sanctuary OT, there was really no point in the tournament that I just like wish this was the generic OT. The Keter Sanctuary OT always felt good because you naturally compress your deck off the ride line, you compress your deck off of Minerva's skill, so just checking this and giving your rear guards drive checks always felt really good. 3 front triggers. I learned the hard way not to play draws in this deck, even though this deck doesn't draw and this deck doesn't necessarily plus to hand. It more or less like soft pluses to its field. But yeah, the draws just like they just decked you out because like I said, like this deck goes through the deck super fast. It's a very super aggressive, like I arguably might say the most aggressive strategy right now, outside of Jet of course. But yeah, that's the reason why we are running the front triggers over the draws, and it did feel really good to check fronts, I'm not gonna lie. For the effect crits, there was times where I did use this to go to soul to get the soul, because like you are like you running, you know, you use a lot of soul in this deck for Minerva's ability, you use soul for Angelica, you use Soul Blast, so you just, again, like the soul crit, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, so that's why we were running 4 of it, just to show up the soul. 4 regular crits, not much to talk about there, and then 4 regular heals. Maybe if Jet becomes like super popular, like arguably like the most played, I would sub in one of the restand heals, because the Stride does restand the Vanguard. It's not like you reride Jet, it restands Jet. So that means since Jet attacked twice, because Jet was the heart, the restanding heal would work. But more often than not, I would just prefer to save the Blitz Order PG or just guard in such a way to where I just take the Jet attack safely. Like if I'm at like 3 damage or like 4 damage if you have no choice. But ideally when you're at 3 damage. But yeah, that's pretty much the deck profile, guys. I could go over really quickly like my rounds. I did make a post about my rounds, but in case you didn't see the post, let's see here. Do I still have it? Oh no, I could just look up the post real quick. Sorry guys. But I also do want to apologize that this deck profile is coming out later than I initially wanted it to. But you know, that's my fault, guys. Like I have like a lot of things I am juggling at the same time. I have work, I have content creation, of course, for you know, content creation, then I have playtesting, and then I have to work out and figure out how to manage my sleep cycle all at once. So I do apologize for the delays that we had this week and last week. But round 1 I was fighting against Usberg. That one was a 2-0. I won the first game pretty convincingly. My opponent was like still in the midst of learning his deck, because I guess he hasn't played his deck in a while. And then game 2, just as time was called, my opponent had like either 1 PG or 2 PGs and an OT in hand, but chose to, I think, no pass my Vanguard outside of an overtrigger, and then I just checked the overtrigger, and that's what won me the game, because my opponent was at 5 damage, and they didn't check a heal, or it was like overtrigger crit, I'm not sure to be honest. But my opponent didn't respect the overtrigger, so that's basically what won me the second game. But I'm not sure who would have won. My opponent was very convinced that if he survived that turn, he'd be able to kill me on the crackback. I wasn't so sure. My hand was pretty decent. But let's get to round 2. Round 2 was Prison. I was actually taking it to time. Prison always takes me into time. I hate Prison so much with a passion. I like the guy. The player was really nice. Really cool guy. I felt bad because I did have to tell him to, like, could you please, like, hurry up. And I even told him, like, hey, man, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I'm trying not to get taken to time. And we did go to time anyways, and I almost lost in time. But the first game, I rushed him. I won pretty convincingly. The second game, he won, or it was vice versa, because he got off a pretty convincing rush, and I just wasn't able to, like, survive because of the hand rip. And then game 3 obviously went into time, and we were able to clutch it in our time. Round 3, I did lose against Ava. This one was very much my fault. Game 2 was very winnable. I won game 1 pretty convincingly. Game 2 was a very winnable game, but I did misplay to whereas I forgot completely to restand my MINERVA Vanguard, and I continued to attack with another rear guard, and I didn't realize it until I attacked with my last rear guard, and I was like, wow, that really sucks. Like, that was such a blatant misplay, and I actually did end up scooping that game because I was basically put in a position that really wasn't unwinnable, and time was coming in close. So we started game 3 before time, but we did end up going into time game 3, and he just clutched it in time. They just naturally have more shield than I do, so it was very much easier for him to clutch it in time. So we lost the time in round 3, even though we did technically lose to our own misplay as well. Round 4, I fought against Chronojet. I beat him 2-0. He won the die roll, and he did go first. So it was weird for the event because the head judge, shoutouts to Peter, I didn't like the way they posed this. The head judge basically said that, like, it's up to you and your opponent to decide how you want to do die roll. Basically, you had 2 options. You could either winner of the die roll must go first, or winner of the die roll gets to choose. I've always personally done winner of the die roll must go first, because that's how Bushiroad does it. So I just clarified it for my opponents, like, hey, winner automatically goes first. Is this cool? And every one of my opponents agreed. We even chuckled that said, like, what happens if we don't agree? And, like, I literally told my opponents, like, man, I don't know. I guess we call judge, and then the judge decides. But I didn't really like that. I feel like he should have chosen one or the other. He shouldn't have given players that option, because that creates inconsistencies in the tournament, and that kind of creates, like, scenarios where they take more time than they normally would on something that's, like, trivial, in my opinion, of course. But round 4, I was fighting against Jet. He goes first. Because he won the die roll, he decides to stay down on grade 2. I'm playing MINERVA, which is, again, a naturally aggressive deck. So there was no benefit for me to stay on 2. I just gained, like, more card advantage and more pressure by riding up to 3. So I didn't really care about, like, making sure he couldn't stride. So I just rode up to 3, bashed his face in, took him to, like, 4, I believe. Would have been 5, but he healed. And then I just Persona rode and proceeded to win on the following turn. Second game, it was... and also, I didn't like this personally, but it really was irrelevant to me in the long run. But what I didn't like personally was that for the loser had to go first. And I guess this is understandable because they did this because of Chronojet, I'm guessing. But I really didn't like that. I prefer loser chooses. Having the loser go first, like, it feels really, because you don't always want to go first. There are certain decks in Standard that do want to go second, like Jet. And it's just like, it really feels bad because he lost the first game and now, like, he's forced to go first again. And even though Chronojet is a really strong deck, like, because, like, my deck is so aggressive, it feels like he's playing from behind. And even though I did push him to 4 before he had the opportunity to go to 3, he chose to stay down again, locking me from my Vanguard restand. And I understand why he chose to stay down. He told me after the game, like, hey, why did you choose to stay down both games? And he told me, I played this matchup like 100 times with my buddy. He plays MINERVA, like, you know, we were playtesting MINERVA and Jet, and the only way I was able to beat him or have a chance of beating him was staying down. So I understood that. It did take me like a turn longer to kill him because I wasn't able to Persona Ride right away. But we were able to clean up that game very heavy-handedly as well. And then round 5, this was up against another Chronojet player. Game 1, he checked the OT offensively, and I just wasn't able to recover from that. Game 2, he checked the OT offensively again, but I did check the OT defensively on one of his kill turns. He made the mistake of attacking with a rear guard, a rear guard first that only dealt me 1 damage, and I knew my only out was either checking 1 heal trigger or exactly the OT. I checked exactly the OT. He cleaned up my front row, which I really didn't care about, and then I believed I clutched it. Yeah, I clutched it on the following turn, if I'm not mistaken, because, you know, if over triggers my only out, I'm going to play to my only out. And then, game three, when we played game 3 in time, and he had the OT in hand in time, and like he was just able to like win time because, you know, it's really hard time. That's all I can say. Like, I was taken to time, and like more often than not, my 2 losses were in time, even though my first loss was because of my mistake, because game 2 is very winnable, but I lost in time. And then round 6 was up against a buddy of mine. He was playing Youthberg. He won game 1 because he checked the OT offensively, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he checked the OT off. I don't think he killed me that turn, but I think he killed me on the following turn. And then I basically had to like reverse sweep him. So I won game 2, and then I also won game 3 because he didn't check a 6 damage heal. And yeah, that was my tournament. But unfortunately, because of the people that we lost to, even though the Jet player did make it into top 8, shout outs to him. I know I was like a little bit salty after our match, but like, you know, it's understandable at the same time, considering he saw the over trigger all 3 games. So, you know, I was understandably a little bit pivoted because of that. But overall, I had a great experience besides like my 2 losses. Like, I had like a really great experience. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to rock my ban the over trigger sleeves. I did ask the head judge before the tournament, and he told me, no, unfortunately, you're gonna have to remove that sleeve. And I understood. I didn't argue. I just subbed it out for another inner sleeve, and you know, we were all Gucci for the tournament. But again, I believe Minerva is like a really strong deck in this format, especially. So this format is very like a very aggressive based format, because that's really the only way you're gonna beat Chrono Jet. You can't really outgrind Chrono Jet because, you know, it's one of those decks that, because of the way the crest works, it's just gonna keep scaling. So, you know, it's a very aggressive format, which I don't really have any qualms with that. I think, you know, I really like this format, to be honest. Like, I guess, like, if Jet high rolls you, it feels bad, but, like, the Jet matchup is very much winnable, in my opinion, at least. But, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, guys. We are selling the playmats. All the information is going to be in the description down below. And, yeah, later.